Thanks for joining today. Today we're going to run through our CAPPS software, and it's actually going to be our version 13 focus. So I'll highlight some of the new features we've added to the tool. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm actually joining today from Montreal, and I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. So our CAPPS tool, it's our capital project updating software. We've developed it for a few clients, and over the years, we've had more and more companies wanting a simple way to do their updating. We've got lots of different scheduling teams. They are often dispersed all around the world, and they've got different ways of doing things. So we wanted to create a very simple user interface to let multiple users just get updates done very, very simply and timely. We've got clients still very challenged to get updates more than once a month. Sometimes they're at every 2 weeks, every week, but more often than that, it's pretty challenging, and lots of clients can't even achieve that. So the idea here was to make it more timely, make it more streamlined, make it simple, and really allow you to have a better impact for where problems are occurring. Okay, the more often you update, the better that's going to be for you to be able to identify those challenges or busts, things that are falling off the rails. So in this version, we've tried to improve some of the functionality to make it more full-fledged functionality, that it's closer to some of the P6 functions. And you're going to see that with the different updating methodologies. I'm going to start with a simple example, and then we're going to jump into a little bit more challenging examples or more complex examples. So you get the idea that it can be used in many different ways. So we've added a lot more columns to understand the data that you've got. We've got better flagging of where the activity is in the process of actually being updated or baselined. I'm going to show you both components of the tool and where is it really at and who's got it. Okay, so those are some of the things that we've improved. We've made the filtering and layouts much more functional. Before we made it maybe a little too simplistic, which made it a bit harder to manage. So we've really enhanced that. And I'll show you how easy it is to use different filters and layouts. So those are really big changes. And as I mentioned, we've added more fields, so there's more notes, better team management, again, so that you can deploy it easier and to a larger group of different types of users. So we'll touch on that. And then, as I already touched on, the different types of updating. Now, you may not have such complicated updating. Lots of people just use duration, but some of our clients use physical with steps. Some use units with their resources. So we'll show you all those different aspects as the more complicated, more full-fledged kind of updating that you can do in the system. And then just the usability and some of the enhancements are technology type of enhancements to make this tool closer to some of our other tools and just keep it nice and consistent across the systems, and just better control of logging and information. Okay, so some of those are more back-end changes that we've done, but we've tried to make the tool stronger and meet some additional needs of some of our clients. And you're going to see some differences in the way the approvals are going to work as well. Okay, so for those of you that are new to the tool, it's all going to be new. So we'll touch on that, and I'm going to do some real updating cycles so you get an idea of how you could use this tool within your teams. Okay, so I'm going to jump in and we're going to take a look at how the tool works. So I'm going to switch over to my software, and you should be seeing P6. Can you read it? Is it big enough? I didn't think of making it bigger, but.
Big enough for me, yep.
Okay, all right, okay. If anyone's having trouble, just put it in the chat. Okay, so let's start in P6. I'm going to start with a simple example. So I'm going to start with one project, and I'm going to start with just a very small set of activities. You can see it's about 15 or 20. So just a very simple starting point. Now, here you are, you've got a new project. Now we have two pieces inside of CAPPS. We've added in the last version a piece that allows you to start to have collaboration at the front of the project. So what we call a baselining capability. So that's the first one. So do I want to do baselining in this project? Yes or no? So you're going to see the functions of CAPPS are controlled inside of P6. So this was our premise. We didn't want the users to have to do a lot of work in two different systems. We wanted to give them the ability to set the things up that they want in P6. That way they can sit them in templates and a much more easy, familiar environment for them to manage. So things are mostly managed inside of P6 itself. There's a handful of things we do directly in CAPPS, but the bulk of it is managed in P6. So if this project is a CAPPS project, that's managed in P6. Do I want these activities to go through baselining in CAPPS, or will we just do all that in P6? So that's up to you. So if I don't want or I don't need that piece, I can just make it inactive. So baselining is not required. So that's what I've done in this example. But I do want to show you updating. So updating has the same sort of statuses. Okay, so let's run through those. So updating is what we originally built the tool for, but we had clients that wanted some baselining capability, more collaborative capabilities. So that's a new feature I mentioned that we added in the last 6 months. So for updating, same sort of list, just a little bit more info here because we want our activities go to complete. Okay, so we've got slightly different status. But you can see here I'm saying I do want updating on my milestones. Okay. I chose not to have any updating on my level of efforts. P6 is going to calculate them. Okay, so that's up to you. It depends on how you use your level of effort. So my example, I've turned them off. And then you can see here some of these have already been submitted. So we've gone through an updating cycle already. And then some are still waiting to get submitted. Okay, so this is the starting point of starting to get tasks to a user over in CAPPS. So we're going to use these for filtering, for divvying them up to CAPPS. Now, how we divvy them up to the right user is the next layer. So let me jump over into that. So again, I've got baselining and updating. Let's focus on updating first, and then I'll come back to the baselining after. Okay. So, all right. So let's look at what I do next. So the next thing I need to do is to tell CAPPS who is going to need to look at these different activities. Now, who does it? That's totally up to you. It might just be one person who does the whole project. It might be different people who do the project or do different tasks within the project. And that's the example I'm putting forward here today, is I've got different people doing the different updates, submitting them. And then I've got potentially different people who will do the approving. Now, you might notice that I've got people's names in one of them, and I've got like a group in the other. Okay, so let me explain how this works. Well, I guess I have a group here as well, but let me explain how this works. Okay, so the way we've set up the profiles and the filtering going into CAPPS is it's a shared responsibility. So let me just move that over. You can see that better. So here I have that Ian is going to do these updates, and then Nicole, and then Sue. Okay, so you can see here that Ian and Nicole and Sue are all part of this Calgary group. Okay, now Sue is also here on her own. Okay, so the idea here is if I log in and my login, you're going to see it is Nicole J. It's going to give me everything that has Nicole J plus anybody in my team. So in this case, anyone in the Calgary team and anyone in the EAI team, I will see those. All right. So for this example, I'm going to be able to see just about all of these tasks. Now you can make it a little more restricted in your real environment. This is a demo environment, so we're trying to make sure we see all the tasks, but this is how this will work. Okay, so this way, the idea is so things do not fall off the table. Okay, let's say I'm away for a week or two. Ian can do my updates, or Valerie or Sue or Amy or anyone in this list can tackle my updates. All right, so that's the key here, is the way that we've built the security is highly flexible, more flexible than most of the tools out there that would be competitive tools. And then the other idea is it goes the other way. So you see here, I've got EAIPM. So here, EAIPM, and only people inside this group can see it. So in this case, I'm the only user who's going to be able to see these and approve them. Okay. Now, when it comes to these ones, these EAI leads, you can see here, you need to be that EAI leader. Okay, so no one's going to be able to update these unless they've got this as their login. All right, so the security is very strong, and it's something that you can pre-set up in templates depending on how your team. Okay, that way when you create the project, a lot of this is already ready and you don't have to do a lot of coding. All right, so that's the way that you can tackle that. Okay, so that's what you need to do to get your framework together. Now you can use other fields. Okay, so some of our clients, they just have one submitter, one reviewer. I'll talk about reviewing and approving. So these concepts can also work. If you prefer just to have one doing all the updating, doing all the approving per project, you can do it that way. Okay. So it's up to you. It depends on how your team is set up. Okay, now let's actually see what all this looks like when I go into CAPPS. Okay, so CAPPS has a username and password that you need to supply it, and that is all administered in P6. Okay, so we work through the P6 interface to give the user their tasks and to identify their username and manage their passwords, etc. Okay, so I've logged in and this is my screen, but you might see that I don't have a filter, I don't have a layout, I don't have a definition. Okay, so depending on how your team is set up, I might have a definition that is set against me as a user, or I might choose a definition when I log in. Okay, now let me explain what that means. So definition is a group, is the filter and the layout. It's these two combined. That is saved into a definition. So I can also pick different filters, different layouts, and mix and match. Okay, but the easier way is to run it with a preset filter. So which project should I have access to? And which fields will I need in my updating? Because not everyone's going to update in the same way. Okay, so that can be managed inside of the user space. So we've got a very simple but very thorough user setup to manage the users. Okay, so we have whether or not this person is allowed to log in, yes or no. That's the first one. And then, are they a super user? If they're a super user, they're allowed to administer the user space. If they're not, they are going to be accessing different things. Can they make filters? Can they make layouts? Can they do the baseline submitting and approving? Can they do the updating, submitting, and approving? Okay, so this is the full components of the functionality. Now, often you have a group of people who are being given CAPPS and they work in the same manner. So engineering folks who need to update engineering tasks, for example, or construction folks who are going to do construction. So you can create groups or teams, and you can have those teams hold a lot of the settings, okay? So it just makes it much easier to deploy. So we have here a team for people who do demos at Emerald, and I'm not in that team. So I can add myself to that team, okay? And that team already has a definition set up. So I'll inherit that ability to have that definition when I log in. Okay, so this is going to make it easier. So I'll just save that. And then I'll log out. And then I'll log back in. And then it's going to be already set up. So I'm going to do a simple updating example. And it's a simple filter. It's going to be one project. I'll show you that in a second. And simple layout. So I have very few fields on this screen. And we can control that. Okay, we have a lot more fields available. And I'll touch on that in my later example. Okay, so we can be as simple or more complex depending on your needs. And it doesn't have to be the same across each project. You can mix and match depending on the role that your company is playing and the way that the project schedule has been put together. Okay, now before I start updating, let me show you briefly the filtering window, okay? So the filtering window lets me choose what kind of activities do I want on the screen. So I can use a project code, or I can use the EPS structure, and I can just go at a higher level in the EPS, or I can choose specific, very specific projects. Okay, so you can do it in multiple ways. In my example, I just wanted one project for my simple update. In my more complicated update, I have a different filter. All right. So this EPS is just matching our EPS over in P6. Okay, and I've filtered out all the other EPS nodes. So I've just kept it real simple here. All right, so that's what that's doing. If you prefer to use project codes, you certainly could. Okay, and then once you've got the projects chosen, we can choose more complicated things. So we can use filters by the resource or resource codes. We can use filters by activity codes. So you can go quite far in your filtering and be very complicated. In my example, I've kept it simple. Okay. You can also say which date range you want to look for. Okay. Because I'm in a demo project, I've got a very big range. I've got a year, but you don't have to do it that way. And in fact, it's probably better to keep it a bit more simple, where you're just doing a look ahead of a month, 2 months, that sort of thing. Okay, but you can control all this in the filter. And then the layout. The layout is a mix of which tabs we're accessing. Okay, so you see I've turned off a lot of tabs. I'm just going to keep it just a very simple updating strategy. And again, you can mix and match as appropriate. Now, the layout also includes which fields and any filtering. You can see I've got on-screen filtering and any on-screen sorting. So you see I've got a sorting here as well. All right. Okay, so how do I do this? How do I do some updating? Well, you can see that I've already got a few that I've done some updating on. So you can see here there's a little piece of information trying to let you know this has been updated, but it hasn't been approved. So you can see this little eye, blue eye for information. It's in information mode at the moment. So we have a little visual to let you know where the activity is at. And it matches that status I was just showing you earlier, okay? So we have the one required. This is the 2 submitted. So it's been submitted, but no one's had a chance to review and approve it yet, okay? So this gives me that information. I've also got it in P6, but often the CAPPS users won't be in P6. So we've got to make sure they know what's going on with their submissions. Okay. All right. Now, what I have here is, of course, start and finish dates, % complete. So it's a simple updating methodology. I can get more complicated, and I will at the end, but let's do some simple updates. Now you'll also notice I have here a pick. It's an activity code. So we can expose different fields that you need or you want to allow the users to update with, or even filter with, okay? So if I didn't want to let them change this, we could make it an activity code that's not editable. So we have that sort of control, all right? So this allows you to do some filtering on screen, very simple. Don't need a lot of training or coaching, so very simple. So biggest coaching is that you've got a little orange filter on that screen that gives you the hint that you're in a filter, okay? So we can expose multiple codes, multiple user-defined fields, and then they can be editable or just view only, all right? Okay, so in terms of doing some updates, so we've got different things we have to update depending on the activity. So you can see that these first ones only have a start or a finish. So those are milestones. That's why they're looking like that. These activities could be task, resource dependent. They could be level of efforts. They could be WBS summaries. So depends on what you chose in your filters and your setup. Okay, so they can be all those other activity types. So we can expose all the activity types. All right, so in terms of updating, so I can click on the field and I can choose the date. All right, so I can choose the start date. Now, if you work in hours, you can also use the hours field. Now, if you can see that our default is it's starting things at the beginning of the day. It's going to finish them at the end of the day. And the end of the day and start can be configured. All right. Okay. So that's starting a milestone. So very simple. Now, I should have probably started that before these, but you see that it got missed. So I've cut that one back up. Now, you can see this activity has already been started and finished. This activity is partway in progress. So I can certainly update the % complete. Let me make that a little wider so you can see it. So this little plus sign lets you go up and down with it, or you can type in a value. Okay, so if you don't want to go by tens, you can type in the value. So you can do it whichever way you want. All right. And then I can finish an activity. All right. Now I can also use a fill down if I want to do more than one activity on the start. Okay. And you can see it's taking the top and filling down. So that's the way that you can use it. Now my date is a little weird because it's in the future, but this just gives you the idea of how you can do that. And then that's it. That's the simplest way that you can do updating. So if I've captured all the updates that I want, I can submit. All right. Now I can also do this in full screen mode, but since my screen is so simple, I don't need it. I'll use that more in a more complicated grid. So once I've got my updates in, I can go ahead and hit submit. Okay, now submit sends it over to whoever is supposed to review them and approve them. Okay, now usually it's not the same person, but just because it's a demo, I will perform both functions. I will also be the approver. Okay, now before I jump into that, maybe a bit hard to see in on the screen, but I've got a little red flag letting me know that I've moved my layout. I've changed something in my layout. So anything that I do up in this layout is going to prompt me to save it. Do I want these changes to be saved? So I can do that at any point, okay? So it just lets me do this, and then it's going to save it, okay? So it's very simple to get your layouts the way that you want, save them, and then divvy them out to your team. And if they want to rearrange them a little for their own purposes and save them, they can do that. Okay. Now in that case, I updated an existing layout. You can see I've got quite a few available. Okay. Now if I prefer to create a brand new one, I could have come in here and used the Save As button, and then I can create a whole new one. When I do that, I can save it to any user within CAPPS. I can just keep it for myself. Or if I know I'm setting one up for the rest of my team, I can divvy it out to the team. Okay, so it's very, very easy to work with and very flexible. Okay, so, and then that we can load any layout that we wish. Okay, which again, it includes the tabs and it includes the grids. Okay, now I've got the task grid, but I also have my approval grid. Now you can see I'm not in approval mode. You see I don't have any of these check marks available because I'm still in submitter mode. It tells me up here. So without logging out, I can just switch over to approver mode, and it's going to make these fields available for me to do some approving. Now, I can approve or reject. We also have another one called review, and I'll show you that when I do a more complicated update. And I also have the ability to put notes and things like that inside of the update. Again, I'm just going to do a simple one, and I'll forego those details. Okay, so I can approve. I can do Control E's. Oops, sorry, I did it backwards. So I can do a fill down, and you can do the approving very, very quickly. Okay, now if I'm not sure what they submitted, you just can navigate back and forth between these two tabs. Okay, so you've got that ability to navigate quite easily. Now, let's touch on these different visuals. So the visuals that you're starting to see are a green check mark. You've got this red for rejected, and you can also see there's a green circle. So there's two different greens there. So the green with the check mark is starting to let you know that this is also an activity that's going to be finished as well as approved. Okay, so it's been set to complete it. So it gives you this extra visual to let you know exactly what's going on with the activity. So when you're finished your updates, you're approving and or rejecting, then you can go ahead and submit it. Now, you know, you're like, well, rejecting with no note, that's not going to be wonderful. So we do have this extra field that we can get on the screen for putting in a note. Okay, so we have that ability. Again, how complicated, how much detail you want, you can control that. So our notes go into two slots in P6. A short note will go into a user-defined field. A more detailed note will go into a notebook. Okay, and that allows you to put more details as you wish. Okay, so this is very easy to work with, very flexible. And if I want that note to always be available, I just need to save that layout. Okay, so very, very simple to work with. So I can go ahead and say my review is complete, and I can submit it. Okay, now, when you do that, you're going to see certain things taking place, okay? So some activities might drop off my screen because they're completed. They've been fully reviewed, they're completed. They just start dropping off my screen. anything that's still in play. So it's been rejected, it's been approved, but it's not finished. I didn't even look at this one, so I missed it, right? So they don't fall away until we get all the way through to completed and fully approved. Okay, so that's what the user sees in CAPPS. Now, of course, having it sit in CAPPS and not go anywhere into P6 is not the objective. So we want it to get up and over into P6. And let me just switch to a different layout. So we have the, we need to be able to actually take a look at what's been submitted, okay? Now, there's different ways to run this. We've got some clients who run the approvals in immediately with no approving, so you can bypass approvals in CAPPS and they go straight in. We have clients who approve in CAPPS and then have a secondary approval inside of P6. So there's many different ways to do this, just depending on how you want to control. Okay, so there's different layers. So here's the output that the P6 user looks at. Okay, so they see some of these tasks have been approved, of course, and submitted, and some have gone all the way to completed. Some are still in submission. That was that little one with the blue eye. I forgot to approve it. Some are approved, but they're not finished yet. Some are rejected. So all of what's going on in CAPPS is visible to the scheduler, okay? The scheduler is in charge of the schedule, and we made sure that that stays that way, okay, even if they're not doing the approvals. So this gives that transparency here. And then all the fields that are over in CAPPS for updating are available inside of here. So you can see what they did in terms of percent complete in CAPPS and percent complete in P6, whether there's steps, whether there's resources, who was it that did the submission, who did the approvals, etc. Okay, so everything is available for the scheduler. Now, when I do the more complicated update, you're going to also see these variance fields and flags and things like that. So everything is available to the scheduler inside of P6. Now, let's look at the other aspect of the software. So updating is a big aspect. A newer aspect is allowing more collaboration on building the schedule, okay? So that's what we're terming inside the software baseline. So I have a baseline definition set up, so I can just go ahead and load that. So I'm going to move out of doing updating back to doing baselining, okay? And I'm going to go back to submitting and looking at the tasks that we want to get some input on. Okay, so let's go look at this. I think I have a mistake in my filter. Let's go take a look. Okay, so let's open up this project. So this is going to be our sample project for baselining. And I'm going to move over to the baselining layout. Okay, so same sort of project as the previous one we looked at, but let's take a look at what we've got inside of the baselining. So you can see here that same philosophy. We're telling the computer which activities we want to work with in the baseline. So here they are. So I've got some that were already submitted. So that's what you were seeing there a second ago. So one was already approved, so it's not on my screen anymore. I think you saw one was, whoops, rejected. Okay. And then there's some here that are requiring baselining, but they're not showing up. So I think I've got something still wrong in my filter. I'm going to log out and log back in. Yeah. What did I do wrong, Dan?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it may be because you clicked the button to toggle off the approval mode while it was still loading the grid.
Oh yeah, okay, probably. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, so let's just be more patient and just let it load. And I moved this, right? Dan, I did that wrong. Okay, let me just get it to refresh and give me all my baselining stuff. Yeah, okay, perfect. Thanks,
Yeah, I
Dan.
think that just might have interfered with it because it didn't
Yeah,
show you the yellow because it had just finished loading the grid, but you'd already changed the state.
right. Okay, thanks. Yeah, okay, perfect. So, okay, so this makes more sense. So we see that I had already put some work onto this one. Look at this, typing is bad. So I've got the name that I want it to be. And I can do a few other things here. So let's touch on what we can do so far. Again, it's a new feature and we're enhancing it as time goes on. So the first things our clients wanted was they wanted the ability for a non-P6 person to give us the durations of the activity and to give us the budgeted units, usually labor, but it's not necessarily just labor, and a bit of information about the name. So those are the fields that we've exposed in CAPPS to allow input to the baseline, to the basic schedule from the beginning, okay? So, so very simple, very, very minimalist, if you will, so that we can get some inputs from those experts very easily. Again, maybe I just deploy civil turbine work. Let me just make this a bit bigger so you can read it, to certain folks, right? Maybe I just give fabrication to certain folks. So the filtering can be quite nice to allow the collaboration real quick to get the schedule put together, okay? So let me go through how you can do the updates here. So we have the ability to copy and paste. So if I'm good with the names, I can just copy and paste them over. If there's something I want to add to it, I can go ahead and add that. And this is going to be the new title, once it's approved, that we want in P6. Okay, so it's quite easy to work with that way. On the budget side, the units, okay, so these are 96 hours, 60 hours, etc. So same thing, I can copy and paste, and then I can edit. Okay, so maybe I need this to be bigger, 80 hours. Maybe I need this to be smaller, 80 hours. Maybe I need this to be quite a bit bigger, 120 hours. So I can go ahead and make the modifications as appropriate. Now, I could put an explanation why I bumped these hours up, right? We need to ensure more time with this client, okay? So there you can put the note in why you've bumped that up from what the standard, or maybe you've got a standard template for a lot of your work, why we've deviated from the standard, okay? And then the same thing for the duration. So these are in days, and same thing, I can copy and paste them and then edit them as appropriate. Or I can just straight up edit. I don't have to copy and paste. It just can be a faster way to get you going in the system, okay? So maybe I need 10 days. Maybe I want 5. Whoops, I do that all the time. 5 days, right? Maybe these are both 5 days, so I can use my fill down to fill them in. So we've tried to make the editing quite user-friendly inside the system. Now, maybe that's all I have time to do, so I don't have time to touch these. So unless I edit something in here, it's going to just leave them on the screen until I get to them, okay? So if I'm good with these, I can just copy the titles, and that will be considered a submission. All right. Okay, so once I've done my updates, same thing as before, I can hit my submit button. Now, just like with the updating, I'm going to act as both the submitter and the approver. Okay, so you should see that they've been submitted. So same philosophy. We've got the little indicator to let you know that they've been submitted. Okay, they haven't been reviewed yet, haven't been approved yet. Okay, so it gives you that visual information on what's going on with it so far. Okay, now you see this one, I didn't make any edits. And as I mentioned, unless there's some edits, it doesn't think it's submitted. So really, I probably should have copied that title there too. Okay. All right. So, so we want to move into approver mode so that I can actually do the check marks, like very, very much the same way as what we did in the updating. Okay. So let's take a look here. So I have the notes from the submitter. Okay, so those notes are available. So I can see what's going on. And I can navigate between the two tabs using this button. Okay, so I can see what was input. Okay, so this is my navigation methodology. So I take a look. Okay, and if I'm okay with all these four, I know I can go ahead and approve them. Okay, and the same thing, you can do a fill down on them. Now, if I'm not comfortable with these and there's something I want changed, I can either review to let them know that I want to spend a bit more time looking at this myself, or I also have the ability to do a reject. Okay, so again, you're seeing slightly different visuals. And in both cases, more than likely, you're going to put a note. Okay, so maybe I need more resources. I want to confirm the duration. Okay, so you can put in the notes so that the end user who submitted this understands where you're at with it. Okay, so this is the baselining piece. So if I've done all my checks, now I didn't have a chance to do these, they're going to just hold until I get to them. Okay, or someone on my team gets to them. So remember, we have that team philosophy as well. Okay, so Amy's on my team, she could also review them and approve them. Okay, so that's the benefit of that team philosophy rather than just one person. So I can go ahead and submit them. And very similar to the updating, the visual cues will be there for the person who submitted the baseline. Okay, so they'll see the visuals to know what's going on. Now, same as with updating. If it doesn't go into P6, it's not much use. So we can go to the baseline submissions and take a look at where we're at with the submissions. So let me just refresh this. Just make sure I've got all the latest and greatest. So I've got a slightly different layout. Now I've grouped it by the status of what's going on with the baselines. So we can see some are not, we're not expecting a baseline, so they're completely filtered out of CAPPS. And then we've got some that are submitted, some that are still under review, the one that we needed more time. Okay, so I can see all that right here. So I know exactly what's happening with the baseline submissions. I can see the labor unit changes between what was in the system and then what they've input, and the duration changes as well. So I can see those modifications, and if I need to, I can overwrite. That's the important thing here. Okay, so the scheduler always has the ability to do an overwrite on anything that's been put in. All right, so they're in charge ultimately. And okay, so that is how the baselining will work. So I can continue, of course, until all of these get through. And once they've gone through the baselining, then they'll be available for starting to do updates against. Okay, so that's an important piece. We hold it back from updates until the baselines are done if you've asked the system to do baselining as part of your process, okay? And it's not mandatory. It's an option depending on how your company and your project works. Okay, so we did a simple update. We did a simple baseline. Now let's get into a little bit more complicated updating methodology, okay? So depending on what you do in your schedule building, you want to go further with this than just doing, I'll switch, hopefully I didn't mess it up. Just doing simple dates, just doing simple submissions, okay? So we do have the ability to go much more in depth, depending again on your business process. So if you use resources, if you use expenses, and if you use steps, we've got a very nice, simple user interface to work with. It doesn't require all these digging deep into different layers and all this sort of updating like in my view, team member, okay? This is more simple, it's more grid-based. And you can expose different parts to different people, okay? So we have some clients who their engineering team does all their step updates. So they give them this tab. They don't have to give them these other tabs at all. All right, so I've left all the tabs on. You don't have to do it that way. All right, so this gives you so much great flexibility on how you're going to get the updates done. Okay, so let's go back and let's start from the beginning just to get an idea. And I'm going to go in full screen mode so we can see that a little bit better. All right. So, and you can make the screen smaller. It's too small for me. You can make it bigger. Okay, so it's a web app, so you can control kind of how this is looking. So let me do a little bit more explanation on the fields that we've got on the screen, because we've got quite a few more and you don't have to use them all. Okay, I'm just trying to give you different food for thought. So I showed you earlier we have columns that can be turned on and off, and which columns are exposed into your CAPPS environment is also configurable. Okay, so if you don't see a field that you want, that doesn't mean it can't get on the screen. Okay, just this is the subset that we've put into our demo. Okay, so, and I think you saw earlier, I can rearrange these grids. Okay, so it's very easy for me to turn on certain fields and also rearrange the grid. Now, something that might be a bit harder to see, we have a freeze frame here. So this keeps these fields on the screen if I scroll to the right. Okay, so that makes it user-friendly as well. I can control the width of these fields too. Okay, so if I don't need to look at the notes, right, I can just squeeze those down and then do my updates. All right, now what you do for updating varies. It varies depending on the kind of activity this is. So usually it's the % complete type, which is an important piece inside P6. And you may or may not use this, again, depending on where you've got with your team on how you do your work. So we have some clients who just use duration. We have some clients who don't want to use steps. So you can see this little icon lets me move over here to use the steps for my updating. So that's this activity. Okay, so I've started this activity, and then these are the 3 steps that I've got that control how far along I am on that activity. Now, when you set up the steps, you can weight them. Okay, so I have 3 steps, and these first 2 are 4 out of 10, so 40% each, and then this one is 2 out of 10, so 20%. So this is going to control my % complete on the activity. Now, if I've got both of these fully done, it's going to be 80, but if this one is only partially done, so let's say 50, Oops, I should make that a little bit bigger. Okay, so then it's going to be 60 if my math is right. Now again, I can put a note in here. Should be done. Okay, so this allows me to do very, very quick updating in the steps alone. Now you can see here, I can even start the activity. Okay, so this is quite, it's a demo environment. So I can bring that activity and then I can do fill downs on here. Okay, so it can be very fast to do these updates and deploy it out to the person who should be doing these updates in the steps. Okay. All right. So now let's just go back to this one because this was the one with the percent complete. So this is a physical percent complete type, which if you use that in P6, you can use your steps to do the updating against. And in this case, it's 60% complete because of those two that I did. Now, some of you might use resource as your way of doing updating. Okay, so we can use that too. So that's this little icon here, and this moves over into your units-based updating. So I've got my budget. Well, this is a bad example because this one's already finished. So let's just go to a different one. Okay, let's go to this one. No, that's a WBS summary. I don't like that one. Let's go to this one here. Okay, so here we have two different resources, and I just don't know if it's units percent. Let me just double check that. It's physical, so it's not the best example. It's not going to recalculate it. So let's go to the one. Let's go to this one. Okay, it's just got one resource, but that's all right. So we had 35 hours as our budget, and our actual, we've got 35. So in theory, it's 100%, but it's not done. All right. Now, if we put that we only did 25, okay, it's going to recalculate. And of course, you might go over, right? In this case, by a considerable amount. All right. So of course, the max in percent complete is 400, or the amount here. It takes the actual and the estimate to complete to come up with your at completion. So I might still have 100 hours left. So of course, this would be not a great activity because I've gone way over in my resources. Okay, so you'd probably want to note there for sure to explain what the heck is going on here. You might even need a change request against this activity. Okay, so we've got that functionality inside of here to request a change. So I want a change, and maybe it's to an existing change order, or it could be a new change order. Okay, so whoops, sorry, my typing. Let me just make that feel a little bit wider so I can read it better. Whoops, there we go. That's better. All right, so this is obviously not doing the paperwork for a change order. It's just starting to flag it so that people understand that there was an impact. And this is a pick list that can be controlled. It's configured, and you can identify what the subject of why the change is taking place. Okay, so you can do all that inside of CAPPS. Now, the last updating component is the expenses. Okay, so we navigate to the little expense calculator icon, and you can update expenses. So very simple, very similar to resources. I have my budgeted cost, my actual cost. So I've already done an update on this once, but now that might be higher. It might be less if I had done an incorrect value, right? Estimate to complete, it's trying to hold my at completion, but my forecast might be better. Maybe I'm only going to need 2,000 to complete. Okay, so it's calculating right there on screen the at completion and your percent complete. So you've got a good value, good reference point as to where we're at with the expenses. Now, same thing, depending on who does your updates on expenses, they can just be given this screen and they work fully in this screen because they can start and finish activities here as well. Okay. Okay, so similar to my simple update, right? I can go ahead and submit these updates, and it's going to go to the approver. Okay, so very much the same process that I showed you a minute ago. The approver is going to see it over in this window with the submissions, and they can navigate to the different tabs to see the data inputs, and they can do the approvals. Okay, so very much the same as what we saw for the simple update. So just for the sake of time, I'll leave it there, but they also have these flags to give them an idea of what's going on. And obviously I put some big expense numbers and big labor numbers inside of those. So you can start to see these values. So they've got an idea. Okay, now those values may not match 100% to what P6 calculates, because of course the duration is a guesstimate, right? Until you F9 and reschedule, which is in P6, your duration variance may not be exactly right, but it gives you an idea of what's going on as the approver inside of the system. So they would approve it, submit it, and same thing that we saw before, it goes into P6, and they can see what's going on with and review and approve it. So the final say is always inside of P6. Okay. And then you can toggle between different layouts. So the steps, of course, will all be in the steps, the notebooks, the expenses, the resources. So you toggle through those. Or you could also use these different layouts as well to see what's been input and what's been submitted from the resources. So that looks like I obviously didn't push those in, so they're not showing up, but they would show up here. Okay. So the intent is to give a layer that's simple to use on top of P6, with the heavy lifting still always being done by the scheduler in P6. Okay. All right, so let me jump back to the presentation. I don't see any, am I sharing my presentation? Yes, I think so. All right, okay, I don't see any questions at the moment. Let me just double check in the chat. Okay, all right, so hopefully you got an idea of how you can use the tool. It's highly configurable and very, very focused on the P6 user interface to be a recipient of the data. Now, I showed you P6 in the client. All these similar layouts can be made in the web. If your team uses P6 Web, all the same sort of layouts can be made in P6 Web for receiving the inputs. Okay. Great. So just about out of time here. So thanks for joining us. We have many tools that work with P6 and Unifier and the Oracle Primavera suite, the construction and engineering suite. So this was one of them. And of course, it's our 13th revision to it. So we have a lot of inputs over many years from different clients coming into the tool. And hopefully you can saw something that could help your team, because updating is a pretty common weakness in project scheduling. And we do all this work to put a big, nasty, beautiful schedule together that has a lot of detail. And then we find a big struggle to get the updates done. Okay. The guys at the site are overwhelmed. We're not getting the updates fast enough. So management can't see whether we're on track. Okay, so these are things that CAPPS will really help your team improve on. And then if you have costs and resources coming from other systems, you can do integrations and get those pushed in, and then have the forecasting done up in CAPPS. So you don't have to use it for the actual updates, but the forecasting can be done quite a bit easier. Okay, so those are all things to consider because updating is always a challenge. Okay, great. So I think we'll stop the recording there.